So this is the Checkpoints, hosted and co-authored by Elena Kvangelashvili. Good to see you, Elena, and myself. I'm Georgi Sakadze. It is Sunday, and we have gathered here in Forbes Georgia studio to talk about business and economics.
Yes, we are ready at 10 p.m. sharp as usual and have a lot to share. Let's start with the latest IMF report on Georgia. The most influential financial institution just downgraded Georgia's economic growth outlook to 3.5%. We asked the IMF for reasons behind such downgrade, and here is the exclusive interview with Jihad Azour, responsible for the region's CCA. What does IMF's current outlook on Georgia's economic growth say about the state, the economic situation in Georgia?
Well, Georgia, like several other countries in the world and in the region too, was severely affected by the impact of the COVID-19 shock. First of all, because of the importance of the tourism sector, and also because of the open economy. And therefore, last year, Georgia had a negative growth of 6%, and we project this year a recovery of 3.5%. This year, the economy will recover thanks to the strong and sustainable measures that the government has introduced last year, both in order to protect the lives and the livelihoods of people through sanitary, fiscal, and monetary measures, to also provide a floor to the economy and support livelihood of people.
Since you're covering the region more broadly, how does Georgia's economic growth and the current outlook compare to that of its peers in the region?
Well, of course, countries are different. You have the oil exporting countries and the oil importing countries in Caucasus and Central Asia. Oil exporting countries who had sufficient buffers were able to use those buffers to reduce the magnitude of the shock. And this year are benefiting from the recovery in oil price. Georgia, compared to the oil importing countries, is faring relatively well. First of all, still enjoy a good level of fiscal buffer, and also has introduced certain number of measures that provided support to the private sector in terms of lending, in terms of easing interest rate, allowed the exchange rate to help reducing the impact of the shock on the Georgian economy. Of course, those measures provided the capacity to Georgia to address one of the most challenging crises for decades, in a way that protected lives, protected livelihoods, and provided support to the overall Georgian economy.
Since you mentioned very rightfully that Georgia is an oil importer country, what kind of weight can lari devaluation have, and what kind is it a downside risk, so to say, to the Georgia's economic outlook?
Well, Georgia has made certain number of important reforms in the past to improve macroeconomic management and to strengthen the fundamentals of the Georgian economies. And thanks to those reforms, Georgia was able to use different tools and economic toolkit to reduce the impact of the crisis, ranging from the fiscal support that has been provided to the financial support, and also using the monetary policy wisely in order to reduce the impact and the challenge that the crisis had on Georgian economy.
Since you mentioned the monetary policy of Georgia, we see that the rest of the world is more on easing the monetary policy, while here in Georgia, the policy is becoming stricter and stricter, and the main one of the main reasons for that is lari devaluation and its spillover effect on prices in general, meaning inflation. Do you think stricter monetary policy has also, which is necessary in Georgia, unfortunately, has also its toll on economic growth?
I would say the contrary. Each country is different, and it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act between different challenges and also using different instruments. Of course, when you have an economy where the tourism sector play an important role, and where the exchange, both in goods and services, are with some important trade partners, it's very important to adjust your policies to your context. And I think Georgia, over the last 12 months, was able, on one hand, to protect the economic stability, and on the other hand, to provide the necessary support, both to the corporate sector and also to the population through fiscal measures as well as also financial sector measures that were implemented by the central bank in order to preserve stability, but at the same time to provide protection to the population.
What impact does the pace of vaccination have on the outlook concerning economic growth in Georgia and also in the region? In Georgia, we now see that the pace is slowly picking up, but it is still way behind the plan that we have, the national vaccination plan.
Vaccination is an important element in the recovery this year. It helps protect lives, but also it helps the economy to recover faster. Our studies are showing at the regional level that countries who are able to accelerate vaccination will enjoy a higher level of growth. Vaccination is an important economic tool as well as it's an important public health priority. We are encouraging countries to accelerate vaccination and also to diversify the sources of vaccines. This also will allow an economy like the Georgian economy, where services, tourism in particular, play an important role, to reactivate those sectors and to normalize further the operation of those sectors. Georgia has also a certain number of buffers that maybe others don't have, and we're encouraging the authorities to maintain the approach that they have been using over the last few months in, on one hand, maintaining the stability that is an important anchor to the medium-term recovery, but also the measures that they have already been introduced.
Besides tourism sector and services, which play a major role in Georgia's economy, as you have also mentioned, what are some other drivers of economic growth looking forward?
Global economy is changing after the COVID-19 crisis. We see new corridors in terms of trade in goods and services. We see potentials of new partnerships. Europe is investing in a strong recovery that is expected to be a green recovery. This offers an opportunity for neighboring countries like Georgia to benefit from that. Technology has played an important role during this crisis, and this is a sector that Georgia can use to accelerate the recovery going forward. Georgia is at a crossroad between different big economic corridors, and definitely this could be an opportunity in terms of logistics, in terms of certain number of new services that they have emerged. But also, Georgia is in a region that in going through some challenges, and some of those challenges have naturally an impact on the economic performance of Georgia.
Thanks to IMF and other international financial institutions and donors, Georgia has secured a sufficient amount of support to fight COVID-19. But what does this new benchmark of economic growth and new outlook for economic growth say? Do you think Georgia might need more financial, even more financial resources to keep economy going?
Well, as you know, the IMF support to Georgia was to back a reform program that the Georgian government has implemented. And we extended the duration of the program for one additional year with that. Very recently, we have reached a staff-level agreement with Georgia, with the Georgian authorities, which concluded the last review of the program successfully. And this review has been approved by our board. And therefore, now Georgia has graduated from the current program. And it depends on the reform agenda of the government. And if the Georgian authorities are interested in a new partnership with the fund will stand ready for that.
Yes, thank you for that. And since you mentioned reforms, considering the global economic new kind of structure that we might have after this pandemic, in the post-pandemic era, what would you name as main kind of reforms or as targets to the reforms for Georgia as well? Because due to this political polarization in Georgia, we have already seen that, for example, for the EU support for COVID-19 for Georgia, we already see some conditionalities, and these conditionalities lie through the reforms, reaching the goals of the reforms that have been set, including IMF as well, because we see their courts reforms, we see their reforms on state-owned enterprises, the directions that IMF has been working with Georgia for years now.
Well, going forward, the priorities are to anchor the recovery on strong footing and exit as fast as possible the COVID-19 crisis. Acceleration of vaccination, strengthening the healthcare infrastructure is an important step. Pursue what has been done in terms of structural reforms to allow the economy to grow faster, reforming SOEs, improving financial inclusion, increasing the role of the private sector in the recovery, addressing the issue of infrastructure in order to strengthen the linkages between Georgia and its neighboring economy and benefit from the global value chain. This also will help diversify and grow the size of the economy. Last but not the least, still, Georgia is a country that need to pursue macroeconomic stability policies by maintaining the level of deficit under control, by maintaining the level of inflation also under control, and keep the flexibility that exists in the monetary policy to anchor the monetary policy on inflation targeting and give it additional credibility. Those are the reforms that Georgia could use in order to benefit from this important moment, that it's not only a shock in itself, but also it's an opportunity to build forward better, to build an economy that is stronger, and also to build a social system that provide broader social protection and increase the level of fairness and the level of social inclusion.
We are BMG. Follow and subscribe for business and economics news.